Good afternoon, or good evening for some of you in the chat room, or good morning for a couple of you in Europe. And welcome to Todd Clint's SharePoint podcast, episode number 359, recorded live Monday, October 9th, 2017. I am your host, and you will notice the only host this evening. Shane is gone. He's on a customer site and all that, and I'm here by my lonesome. I got all the limelight all to myself, all of your glorious attention, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. So it just feels so much cozier now, more snuggly. I just want to give you all little hugs. But Shane should be back next week, I believe. He should be around. But in the meantime, if you want to talk to me, tell me how much you love the podcast without that Shane guy screwing things up, you can hit me at Todd Clint on Twitter and all that, or Todd at toddclint.com in the email, and we'll chat. We'll do some of that. I like doing that. I like to chat with people. Friendly guy. On to production notes. I believe I'm all caught up. Last week I was 2 episodes behind because I hadn't done the Ignite one. While I was at Ignite, I got all my things set up here on this box, all my tools, and while it should work remotely, I've not ever tried it. And so that's why I was a week behind, but now I'm all caught up. I got them all cranked out last Thursday. And the other thing is we are close to having a new name for the podcast. We have bought some URLs and all that kind of stuff. We're just kind of figuring it all out. We got to get some logos and all that, but I think we've decided on something. If Shane were here, I would talk to you about it, but that's kind of something that we both have to do together. But we're getting close, folks. We are getting close. When that happens, there'll be some rejiggering. There'll be new logos and all that. I'm probably going to change some of the feed URLs also. Now, there's ways to redirect RSS feeds, and so I will try to do everything by convention. But depending on where you're consuming this via directly the XML file, things like that, there might be some jiggering around, but when we actually make those changes, I'll let you know. I'll telegraph all that. I'll let all the podcast aggregators know. We'll try to do everything the right way, but that might be something to look forward to here in another month or so. All right, on to topics. We've got a bunch of them today, and since I don't have to share the stage with that Shane guy, I get to talk about whatever I want for as long as I want. It is glorious. One of the first things that I want to talk about is an article I saw on TechCrunch. I think it came out today, 7 hours ago, it says. The headline for it is, "This is not a drill. Microsoft admits Windows Phone is dead for real." And this is referencing some stuff that Joe Bellafiore said, where on Twitter this morning, essentially he said they're going to continue to support it. They're going to put out security patches and things like that. But there's nobody writing new OS code. There's nobody writing new app codes, things like that. And he was a little remiss about how difficult it was. He knows, like everybody who had a Windows Phone, and I got 2 of them in my desk right here that I've just been waiting for the day when I would see the thing that told me that Windows Phone was back from the dead and I could throw them on my charger and fire them back up. But we all know that the problem with Windows Phone was the app gap. There just weren't the apps that we needed. And in his Twitter explanation, Joe Bellafiore explains that they just could not find a way to incent app developers to support their platform. And I feel kind of bad for him. And he talks about some of the things that they did. They tried financial incentives. They tried writing the apps for them. They did all kinds of things. And there just wasn't enough users for people to stay up to date on them. And so he basically said they finally have given up. They're admitting defeat. They're focusing now on iOS and Android, making all the great applications on there. And that's kind of been obvious. There's no surprise part there. They've got a flurry of applications on, I'm an Android guy myself. I've got a Galaxy S8. And there are tons of Microsoft apps on there. I use them every day. There's OneNote, there's OneDrive. I use Office Lens to scan things. There's the Office 365 admin tool. All those things. They're doing a fantastic job writing apps for other platforms. And I think they notice that that's where it's going to go. But it is sad that platform is dying, or is dead, or is confirmed to be dead, I guess. Because I really liked the OS. I really liked some things that it did. The live tiles were great. The scrolling up and down was great. As I always said, so I came from Android to Windows Phone and then went back to Android. everything that Windows Phone and Android, the OS, both did, I liked better on Windows Phone. Just so here's an example. One of the things that Windows Phone did was it would allow you to shut your Wi-Fi off for a specific amount of time. You could say shut Wi-Fi off for an hour, and then you don't have to worry about turning Wi-Fi back on. In an hour, it'll turn itself back on, whatever. So I was at a business. I had connected to their Wi-Fi years ago, and so my phone knew about it, but turns out that their internet was slow, way slower than my cellular connection. But now every time I go to that business, my phone wants to connect to that Wi-Fi, and it's got a portal page, it's got a thing you have to agree to, and I just don't want to fuss with that anymore. And so I went there today. Sure enough, my phone on my Wi-Fi on my phone connects to that. What I wanted to do was say, shut off Wi-Fi for an hour. So while I'm there, don't do Wi-Fi, don't connect to this stupid network. But then when I go home, without me thinking at all, just turn the Wi-Fi back on. It was a great thing that Windows Phone did. But everything that Windows Phone and Android both did, I liked better on Windows Phone. There's just so many things about the OS, but there was no applications. And you can hear people talk as much about web apps, web pages that act as applications, but it's just not there. And I mean, I tried really hard. I held out a long time. I really love my Windows Phone, but it just wasn't going to be. So I don't know. The phone part works and all that. I don't know what to do. I hate to throw them away. I hate to get rid of them. They're great devices, but I just don't have anything to do with it. Mark in the chat room mentions IFTTT. I actually am using IFTTT, Mark, for that kind of. I've got IFTTT set up that if my location is my home, turn my Wi-Fi on, essentially. There's a couple others that do that. There's one, Tasker or something, that does that too. So there's some of those things, but that feels like something that should be built into the OS. I would love to do that. I hate having all those processes running in the background. Now I use IFTTT enough that one's probably worth it. And so Jeff Hicks in the chat room is putting up another thing. Yeah, there's apps to do it. But I just like that it was built into the OS. There's no overhead. There's no extra cost. I don't have to worry about somebody hacking my stuff. I don't have to worry about loading up an app that says, hey, will you let this Wi-Fi timer control your Wi-Fi, get your location, look at your contacts, scour all your pictures and videos. Do you give it access to your blood type and your mother's maiden? I mean, all that stuff is just, it was so awesome just to have it built into the OS. And we don't have that now with Android. So it's kind of a sad deal, but it's official. Windows Phone is dead, and I don't know what to do. I feel sad. I mean, we've known it for a while. Jeff in the chat room reminds me to take my vitamins. I do. I take my every morning. We got these vitamins now. They're like little gummy bears. Try to keep me from taking my vitamins every morning. So I got all that. So that was some news out of Microsoft. Now, today was not all just bad news from Microsoft. Another blog post that I saw today that was very happy, and something that I kind of thought was coming, but was officially announced today. The OneDrive team, the man, the myth, the legend that is Stephen Rose, has done it again. And OneDrive, the client application, has gotten another update. And this one is, he tries to be humble and say that it's all about beautifying the OneDrive client. And so the title of the blog post is Beautifully Useful, Introducing a New Look for OneDrive. But I'm going to be honest with you, he's kind of downplaying a bunch of great functionality too. So it is beautiful. It is an aesthetic upgrade from the previous client, but there is some great functionality in there also. So they're talking about standalone sync clients. They're talking about ones on your phone, your tablet, your computer, all that. And basically, they've updated those clients. They've got better arranging of things. They take a lot of feedback. User voice is a great way to get a hold of them. And they take a lot of that feedback. And so people have said, hey, we wish we had denser views with more content in it like we're used to, like the Details view and Explorer. We wish this looked the same here and there. And they took all that and they did what they could. They were very responsive. And so that's coming out. A couple of notes that I thought was funny as I read this blog post. So one good thing is a unified view across all the platforms. And so they've got a screenshot of that. And it's funny because they've got the different views, and then below they've got what each view is, but they're not in the same order. So it's like the phone view, the laptop view, and the tablet view. And then there's like desktop, tablet, and phone, except it's all in the wrong order. Not a big deal. But anytime, I mean, going back to the days 20 years ago with Java and all that, anytime you have this idea that you want to make something that runs on a bunch of different platforms and runs the same, what you end up with is the lowest common denominator. You end up not being able to do anything crazy that one particular platform can do and doing it well. I haven't used the new client enough to know if that's going to be a problem or not. But that was my first thought when I saw that, is they're going to do the same all the way across, so it's always only going to be whatever everything can do. That remains to be seen. But it does look better. Consistent interfaces are an important thing, and I'm glad that they're paying attention to that. Another thing that they're doing is they've got new folders and icons and all this kind of thing. And I like this, and they really, really took this seriously. They mentioned in the blog post that there are 4,200 variations and sizes of icons in the new client, so that regardless of what your screen shape or size or orientation or religious preferences, any place you want to display OneDrive things, they have a dozen icons specifically for that. If you're facing west, it's one type of icon, whatever. They really took that seriously. And they talk about how they, kind of looked into how we see things, how our eyes work, and they did that. So another thing that they did, and this is something we've talked about a few times, but I really like this one, is they built in more of their file viewer support. So they claim now that they can view natively inside of the OneDrive client 270 different file types. So we're talking obvious things, Microsoft things, and, images, JPEGs, PNGs, that kind of stuff, text files, but also Photoshop files, PDF files, RAW files, those kind of things. Really just trying to make it super easy for you to get into the client, find your file, and just not have to futz with a bunch of things and just get in there and do it. And they've also added some things to help you discover documents that have been added recently or edited recently or have gotten a lot of attention. They've got some indicators and all that. So it makes it easier to find new files quickly, makes it easier to find active files more quickly. So it's not just a list of files anymore. You don't have to know where things are at. Just a lot of really good stuff. So I've said it before, I'm a huge OneDrive fanboy. So my bias probably shows up here. But in the last couple of years, the OneDrive team has made a bunch of huge, unreasonable promises. And then as near as I can tell, delivered on all of them. And so again, hopefully you're all sick of hearing about this because you're all on board with OneDrive and you're like, yeah, we get it. OneDrive's great. But if you're not, if you've had a bad experience with OneDrive for whatever reason, give it another shot. There's a bunch of free ways to do it. The consumer product is free. You get like 2 gig of storage, 5 gig of storage, something like that. OneDrive for Business, you can get a demo client, a demo Office 365 tenant, play with it that way. And so there's just all kinds of stuff. And so Chris Webb in the chat room brings up another thing that I haven't hit a bunch because I haven't used it, honestly, so I didn't want to talk about it. But one of the things that the OneDrive team has focused on a lot in the last few months is sharing. And they focused on it from 2 incredibly important aspects. So they haven't missed anything. One of them is they're trying to make the sharing experience a whole lot easier, both just in execution, like how many clicks is it, how obvious is it for people to understand, but also in flexibility, so you can actually share with people you want. You can share with people in your tenant. You can share with people that aren't in your tenant that just have Microsoft accounts. You can share with people that don't have Microsoft accounts. I mean, all the flexibility that you want. So that's one aspect of it, the usability. But then on the other side, they said, okay, we're making it really easy to share these files, but we don't want to make it too easy, because if we make it easy for the good guys, we don't want to make it easy for the bad guys also. And so they've done a bunch with that, expiring links and all those kind of things. So it's just a great platform now. OneDrive was one of those things back in the day when I used to make fun of OneDrive. The sharing was one of those things because the sharing in Dropbox was so much better. And now Dropbox has completely shut off anonymous sharing, whereas OneDrive has stepped up and said, hey, we want to make this anonymous sharing that much easier. And so that's another thing to check out. So big fan of OneDrive. Spent way too much time talking about it today, but that's a good one. So a couple of good announcements coming out of Microsoft. Another announcement that's come out of Microsoft, and I can't decide if this is good or bad or weird or what. I'm sort of befuddled by it. This was an announcement that came out last week. But Microsoft, so let me preface this by saying, when I first saw this announcement, it was from somebody on the product team, and I wish I would have saved the Twitter announcement, but it was, you've been asking for this, and we listened, so here it is. And the announcement was Microsoft Edge on iOS and on Android. And So my first thought was, who the hell's been asking for this? And like, I want to meet him. Like, I want to talk to this person and say, what's wrong with you? Like, were you not held enough as a child? Do you have daddy issues? And who is the person who's looking at their phone and looking at this beautiful Android device or this shiny new iPhone 72 or whatever it is, and they're thinking, this device isn't bad. It can scan my face and it can read my fingerprint and it can control my TV and my thermostat, but I just wish it had Edge on it. Oh, that's what would make this device perfect. But anyway, so to whoever you are out there who's been begging and dreaming about Microsoft Edge on other phones, your dreams have come true. So Edge is available on iPhone now, and it's going to be available on Android pretty quickly if it's not already. I'll be honest, there's no way I'm putting that thing on my phone, so I don't know. So in the chat room, I think Mark Chrisman brought up a good point. He's like, I've not been asking for it on other devices, but I have been asking for things like add-ins and that kind of stuff. That's part of this that befuddled me, was the Edge browser itself needs so many things fixed. I can't imagine spending any cycles on anything else other than fixing the things that are broken with it. But to be honest, there is a big play involved here. And what they're really doing is they made this possible because in the latest update for Windows 10, Redstone, whatever it is, I forget what its name is, they're trying to build this whole idea that you can marry your PC to your phone in a useful way, the way that the Apple people have been doing for a decade now. And one of those things is they want to have you be able to bring up a web page on your phone and say continue on PC and zap it over to your PC and be able to see it in the big rich thing. That's the purpose of Edge on these devices. I get that. I do that all the time, and I've done that forever. I just do it with Chrome. I'm on my Android box, and they're on my Android phone, and I have Chrome open, and if I want to continue reading a page that I had open in Chrome on my PC, it just worked. And if I'm on my phone and I want to see a page that on my PC, it's just there. It's in my history. So I've been doing this. I understand the desire for it. It's already there. And so part of that is, again, this is very much for that functionality for Redstone. And because of that, and because of platform restrictions, Edge isn't actually its own browser. It's more a skin for the built-in things. And so it's not, it's got some edgy things, but it's really to support this whole continuum thing between PCs and phones. But anyway, for those of you that have been dreaming for it, Dave Aykroyd says he'll put it on his phone. I don't know why Dave Aykroyd hates his phone. I don't know. Maybe Dave Aykroyd's like, I can't keep up with my phone. It's just too fast. I need something to slow this thing down. Make it a little uglier, a little tougher to use. I know what it is. I'll put Microsoft Edge on it. I don't know. I can't understand that. But I don't believe that I will put it on any device that I actually care about. I just can't imagine doing that. So those are the announcements, the big things that grabbed me for this week. Another thing that I've been doing this week, and I don't have it in my notes, and I wish I had, I've been watching videos from Ignite, a whole bunch of them, and learning all kinds of great stuff. Man, the content there was great. And I'm not even talking about my session. I'm talking about the other ones. I've watched, Spence Harbar's got a great one on hooking up the Microsoft Identity Management with SharePoint 2016, and that's a great one. And that one, I've not had to do that yet, and honestly, I'm not sure that the customers that I deal with will need that, but Spence knows so much about identity, and just listening to him talk about that, I picked up so many great things from that talk. So I recommend that one, and some other ones that I've listened to. One thing I will tell you, though, and I say this as a speaker, this is blatant solicitation, the good kind, not the creepy kind. You can still do evaluations. So if you watch my session, the migration session that Jason Himmelstein and I did, if you watch it online, or if you were at the session and just forgot, you can go into my Ignite and go to the evaluations and fill out an evaluation. I say this tongue in cheek, but those evaluations are just gold to the people who put these conferences on. That's how they know to invite speakers next year. So if you went to our session, jump in there, give us a good review, and then next year when they pick speakers, that's part of the process. But I've been doing that as I've been watching sessions on YouTube. I've been going back into the tool, adding them to my schedule, and then giving them good reviews, because they deserve it. That helps a lot. But if you haven't already, you can go out to YouTube and look at the Ignite videos. There's a bunch of great stuff out there. It's I don't know. I like having it on the background. I'm hoping I'm learning it through osmosis. All of those things. So Dave in the chat room, I don't understand this. It looks like he's saying that he wants Shane at Ignite next year and not me. English must be his second language or something. I don't know, but that can't be correct. Okay, so I've been busy the last couple of weeks doing consulting things and I've just had some great conversations with customers and things like that. And so I wanted to spend a couple of minutes sharing these with you guys. One of them was a fairly new SharePoint administrator who was putting on SharePoint 2016, and they had some questions about the node runner process, essentially trying to figure out how to architect their farm and those kind of things. So I just got to walk through that. It had been a while since I had that conversation with anybody, and so it was just kind of fun. I kind of missed it. So for those of you that haven't had to deal with this yet, node runner is the name of the executable that powers all of the search functions inside of SharePoint. And there are up to 5 instances of node runner. The admin component, the analysis component, indexing, content query, and I forget the other one, crawling, something like that. But anyway, depending on which roles you have, which search roles you have enabled on a server, you'll have up to 1 or 5 of these noderunner.exe processes running. And as you can imagine, search takes up a lot of resources. It takes a lot of RAM, it takes a lot of CPU, it takes a lot of IO, all those things. And so you'll see these crazy node runner processes just gobbling up everything they can get their hands on. And so this person was asking, what is this with node runner? What can I do? All that. So I talked to them a little bit about how it breaks out, and they were asking questions like, what happens, like if one of these node runner things spikes, will it stay huge or will it go back down? And it was just a great conversation to have about how all that works. So the answer to that particular question, each one of these node runner processes does a specific task. And so as that task, is tougher or requires more resources, it will balloon up to take that space. And then their other question was, does it ever release it? And the answer to that is maybe, sort of. And so then I got to talk to them about how SharePoint is a good citizen of the box. And if it sees that the box is running out of resources, there are a number of things that it can do to release its footprint. So it can take different, query processes and get rid of some of the cache and shrink that process. The analytics stuff can pare down. It can quit doing some of the type ahead, those kind of things. But if it sees the box is running out of resources, it will indeed start paring different things down. It'll recycle app pools, that kind of stuff. On the other hand, if you've got search running on a box, and this box has 24 gig of RAM, we'll say, and search is puttering along and there's only 10 or 12 gig of RAM being used on this box, then search is going to say, hey, listen, this guy paid for 10 gig more RAM and we're not using it. Let's find some way to make SharePoint better by using that RAM, and it will cache more things aggressively, that kind of stuff. So it will expand to fill the space available, but it will also reasonably shrink and all that. And as part of that process, I was explaining what each of these node runner processes, and you can't really tell which one is which. If you've got a really huge one, it's kind of tough to tell. Is the query process that's doing it? Is it the the indexing, whatever? And so I got to break out my old friend PowerShell and show some of those skills off. And my first thought was, and I hadn't done this forever, and you can do it in Task Manager. So you can go into Task Manager, you can add a column. The column you want is command line, not file name or path or anything. Because what you want is you need the path to the executable, noderunner.exe, but since there's 5 or 6 of these processes running, they get sent configurations, they get sent what their task is. So you need that whole command line to see which one it is, to see if it's the XML for the query processing or whatever. And so I broke out get process, which is PowerShell's native way to get the processes that are running. I can get the PID, I could get the process name. I couldn't get the command line. I couldn't get that full line out of there. So back before get process was a thing, or at least before I knew the get process was a thing, the other way you could do this was get WMI object, Windows Management Instrumentation. And you could say get WMI object, and then the WMI object that you want is Win32 process. So I did that, and that's kind of the big thing there. And then I just kind of walk through, and this is the beauty of PowerShell. It's all these building blocks. And so once I figured out how to get all of the information that I needed, I could then start working it through things and paring it down and all that. So what I came up with, and I'll put this in the show notes or something, maybe I'll blog it, I don't know, was, get WMI object, W32 process, pipe that through where object, and I said where the property name is equal to noderunner.exe, so that filters out all the processes that aren't noderunner.exe. And then I said select the process ID so that they could look it up in Task Manager, the name, and then the command line. And if you expand the command line all out, then you can see the path and all that. And then I had to pipe that through format lists so that it would list them out as opposed to trying to do it in a table because those are really long. So I will post that in there. Now, in our chat room, every once in a while, a very distinguished gentleman, Jeff Hicks, shows up and helps keep our keeps us honest with our PowerShell because he's forgotten more PowerShell in the last 20 minutes than I've ever known. And so it looks like for the most part, my PowerShell is correct, except he wants me to do the filtering on the get WMI object side. So he wants me to do get WMI object, W32 process, and then dash filter, and then name equal noderunner.exe. And then the selects and all that kind of stuff. He also wants to make sure that we remember there's an out grid view so that you can get the fancy grid that comes up. So if I blog this or do anything with it, I will do his correct way. And he begs me, please don't, for all that is holy in PowerShell, post a command using where object. So I'll have to talk to Jeff about why where object is bad, because I use where object all the time to filter things out. And I think part of that is because it is consistent. So get WMI object has a filter built in, and I don't know what all properties I can filter on. Clearly name is one of them. But what if I want to filter on something else? I don't know if this one will handle it. I know with the SharePoint commandlets like get SP site, there are some properties you can filter on inside of the commandlet, which means it does it back in the object model level. But if not, then you have to do it on the pipeline. And so I've gotten used to doing where object just because it works all of the time. Every process, every commandlet I feed into it, every property I want, it always works. So Jeff is pointing out that you should always filter early, and that makes good sense. You don't want to send any more garbage down the pipeline than you have to. And so if you have the opportunity to do that, you should. And WMI has that. So if I blog this or do anything with this, I will make sure and put the correct way so that I don't give Jeff yet another aneurysm. I'm sure he's suffered many suffering through this podcast. But it was just a fun conversation to have. I hadn't had it in years, and doing the PowerShell stuff was fun. Another conversation that I had was with somebody who was at the upgrade session at Ignite. And I'm not going to call him out because I didn't get his permission to do so. But he was in the audience at Ignite, and this is somebody that I've emailed with before. I've known this guy for years, and I think we've even met in person a couple of times. But he was in the audience at Ignite, but then he didn't introduce himself. I didn't know he was there, so he emails me afterwards. He's like, "Hey, was it your session Thursday? It was great." I'm like, "What are you doing? You got to come up and say hi. Don't leave me hanging like that." So don't be that guy. If you're at a conference and you see me speak, and for goodness sakes, come up and introduce yourself. But he was talking about the how to handle URLs when you're doing the upgrade, and how what URLs you use for testing, and how you can have your 2013 farm and your 2016 farm both using the same URL namespace. How does that work? Things like that. And it was a whole big conversation. We could spend a lot of time on it. We're kind of running over here. I don't want to get into the whole thing. But basically what I told him was, my rule of thumb when doing anything in SharePoint is I always create the web application with whatever the most correct URL will be when it's in production. So in his case, he's got a 2013 farm chugging along, making him a hero at his company, and it's portal.company.com, something like that. He's going to move all that to 2016. How does he install 2016 and add all that up and move everything over? I told him, you may end up doing some temporary stuff, but when you install 2016, when you create that web app, call it portal.company.com. Whether you do it in PowerShell, Central Admin, whatever, call it whatever the most correct name will be for it. Make that the default zone URL. Make that be what the host header gets written as. Make that. And then if you want to do some testing as you're in the middle of your migration, add a secondary URL, add a internet zone URL, SharePoint doesn't care, and then make it test.portal or test-portal or something. But always create your URLs with whatever the most correct name will be. And then work around that if you have to do something with DNS or more alternate access mappings, whatever. That was my advice to him. So I appreciate him. If that wasn't clear, I appreciate him emailing me so that I could clear that up for him. And for goodness sakes, come up and say hi if you see me at a conference. My goodness. The final thing, and this is thanks to Joanne Klein. She posted this on Twitter yesterday, I believe. This is something that I'd seen before and just kind of forgotten about, but it's a very handy thing. If you go into Microsoft Word and you need a bunch of just bogus text for something, you can, because you're uploading a bunch of documents to SharePoint Search or whatever, Microsoft Word has a built-in bogus content creator. And so if you type all of this with no spaces, equal lorem, Lorem, opening paren, and then an integer that is paragraphs, so we'll say 5 paragraphs, comma, and then another number, we'll say 7 for the number of sentences per paragraph, closing parens, and hit enter, it will use the Lorem Ipsum fake text and fill your document with, in this case, 5 paragraphs of 7 sentences of blah. And so Excel supports this. There's a ton of things that support this. There's websites that'll create it for you. But this is something that I just always forget, but is a great thing when you're filling out, checking templates or whatever, or just putting documents and trying to make big documents and small documents. It's super easy to do that inside of Word. And, Joanne tweeted out, it's just a good thing to remind folks of. So Lorem Ipsum, and I'll type the thing in the chat room, but it's fun. Works like a champ. Love it. I did it today just so I'd feel smart. So thanks to Joanne for that. All right, we're going a little over. I shoot for half an hour on these things. We're going a little over, but we're in the shameless self-promotion part of this. In 5 days, so what is that, Friday, Saturday? SharePoint Saturday, Cincinnati. That other guy, Shane, is going to be there. October 14th, SharePoint Saturday, Cincinnati. Don't go for Shane. He's underwhelming, honestly. I'll be honest with you. He's not here right now, so I can say these kind of things. Shane's not that great, but Bill Bear is going to be there. Bill is pretty great. If Bill's hat is there, Bill's hat is where all of Bill's knowledge comes from. It's kind of like Samson in his hair. So you can go out there and see that free event. Go out there and hang out there. Those guys at spsevents.org and find out about that and see Shane. Tell him hi for me. And then in a month from today, the Thrive Conference in Slovenia. You can go to thriveconf.com. I will be there. I'll be speaking about a couple of things. Beautiful country. If you're in Eastern Europe or really anywhere, you can do a lot worse than going to the Thrive Conference. If you're there, say hello if you see me. On December 5th, Shane will be speaking via the internet to the SoCal PowerShell user group, and he's going to be talking about something. I forget what he's talking about there, but he will be doing that remotely. And then in May, I don't know what, I don't know who, I don't know how, but it is the SharePoint North America Conference. For those of you old grizzled SharePoint veterans such as myself, and we remember the SharePoint conferences of yore, this is going to recreate that magic. It's going to be awesome. It is May 21st through the 23rd. You can find out all about it at sharepointna.com. I don't know what, but I will beg, borrow, or steal a way to get into that conference. So if you're going to be at SharePoint NA, I will see you. It may be because I'm vacuuming the floors. It may be because I'm washing the windows. I don't know, but I got to go to this one. I'm as excited or more excited about this than I am about Ignite. It's going to be great. Now, the good news about this one is it's a different calendar year. Might be a different fiscal year for depending on how your company works, but it's a different calendar year. So hopefully going to Ignite didn't slow you down. And then it gives you an opportunity, if you've got an IT organization, you can go to this SharePoint event, and then some of your coworkers can go to Ignite next September in Orlando. So going to be a great conference. Microsoft is well behind it. Jeff Teeper is doing the keynote, and it's going to be a good time. I can't wait for that one. So that's sharepointna.com. Okay, folks, you in the chat room, you've been a wonderful audience. I'm going to stick around the chat room. I got to talk to some folks in there about things. We will be back next week. Hopefully Shane will find it in his heart to join us next week, and we'll be able to get the show back together, the two of us. But I will see you next week. Happy SharePointing, and have a good day.